How do you create an effective internship program at your church so that you can avoid ministry burnout? We'll talk about it today.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Hey guys, thanks so much for being here this week. Against my better judgment, Ben Stapley is back on the show this week. Actually, it was not my judgment. He actually has paid me under the table to be a guest numerous times on this podcast. So full disclaimer here, I get bribe money from Ben to be an appearance, to make an appearance so many times on the podcast. Just kidding. He's going to crush me for that one. I'm sure I'll be getting text messages as soon as this episode airs, but that's okay. Ben's a great guy. He serves on staff at the Life Christian Church in West Orange, New Jersey. He leads a staff and volunteers. There, I should say, to execute worship experiences and more. He served at several churches. Incredible experience and insight into worship experiences and pastoring and leading well. So, great guy on today. I'll be talking with Ben about how to form an effective internship program at your church. I'll also stop here and say that if you are looking for an internship somewhere, we would love for you to consider our ministry as a place that you can get school credits, that you can get hours, that you can spend some time working in a ministry. If you would like to join our team, feel free to email me directly, carl@1230.media. carl@1230.media. I'd love to chat with you. Our team would love to chat with you. We love having folks that love Jesus, that love serving in ministry, that love serving the local church. So if you are interested, feel free to drop me a line, carl@1230.media. All right. Also on the show today, I welcome Darren Foreman. Darren is the pastor of Auxiliary Ministries at Eagles Nest Church in Georgia. Darren has some great thoughts today on how to avoid ministry burnout. These topics obviously can work together. If you have a great internship program, the load lightens on you. That's one aspect. But Darren will also talk about more ways to prevent yourself from frying to a crisp at your church, how to avoid ministry burnout. All right, so I'll talk to Ben first and then Darren. It's all coming up after this. Hey, ministry leader, I wanted to let you know about a great conference that we partner with. This year, the 9th annual That Church Conference will be happening at Lake Lanier, Georgia, at the Resort and Conference Center there. My great friends Mark McDonald, Ben Stapley, Justin Dean, and others will be taking the stage along with other great speakers. This conference is October 25th and 26th. You can use the code MSH, as in Making Sunday Happen, MSH10 for 10% off the ticket price at thatcc.com, just for being a faithful listener to this podcast. Again, use the code MSH10 for 10% off your ticket price at thatcc.com. Hey guys, I'm hanging with my buddy Ben Stapley. Ben, you're doing a workshop here at SALT all about creating an awesome internship program, especially for creatives, but can be used really in any department, right?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we oftentimes forget about our interns. We think about them last from any organization or any church, but also from the creatives, we think about we need the best gear, or we need the highest end talent to move things forward. I want to encourage churches, challenge them and think, no, you can move things forward, not just with the highest level talent, but also with developing talent, with interns as well.
Yeah, so give me more why. Am I just doing it just so they turn into an employee? Am I doing it just to maybe not spend as much money? Like, what's my why?
You hit all of them right there. This podcast is done at this point. No, but to be honest, there's a couple things you hit there right now. Staff development. Oftentimes, I found my best staff members, long-term staff members, have been interns. From a cost-benefit analysis, it is a little bit cheaper. Now, I would encourage people to do a stipend, not to just do free, but to pay them to some degree. But the biggest reason at the end of the day for me is the why is people are our greatest resource. Again, we're at a conference here, we're seeing a lot of gear, we're seeing a lot of artistic principles being applied, but people development, at the end of the day, it's not our buildings, it's not our facilities, it's not our multiple campuses that we have, it's not the endowment that we have, that it's the greatest resource as a church, it's our people. So how do we develop them? Internships are a phenomenal way to do that.
Good. All right. So you're talking about in your workshop, you're talking about developing them in kind of a before, during, and after model, right? Walk me through that.
So yeah, this is helpful because I often spend the majority of my time, most people will do the middle. How do we invest in them while they're here? But forget about before and the after. For the before, some basic things, again, low-hanging fruit here, write a job description. Many, I've been a part of 2 internships when I went to college. Neither of them had a job description. I walked in and it was, there's the bathroom, there's your desk, you get to it. What am I doing? I don't know. So give them a basic job description on the way in. Welcome them to the same degree that you would welcome a new staff member. You would throw a little bagel luncheon with all the staff. Small touches like that. Whatever you would do for a staff member, apply that same principle for an internship. They might not be there 8-10 years, but they're going to be there 8-10 weeks. Invest in them before they show up, make them feel valuable, and that will give them a great start to jump in.
Good. Okay, so get to during. What are the things, they're not just fetching my coffee. What are the things that we're putting them to work doing?
The one biggest principle that I've seen super helpful, especially in the artistic realm, is trying to get multiple internships for a program. The reason being is this. Oftentimes, a lot of our people in the creative arts, they're working behind a screen and they're working by themselves, which is a very lonely experience, not the best. So if you get 2, you automatically have a buddy with you during that internship that's going to be life-giving. So it's beneficial for them. Now, selfishly speaking, for the manager who's overseeing them, it's less managerial time. Because if they have a problem, if they run into a roadblock, hey, I forgot the password login to the creative suite.
I give it to both of them.
Ask your fellow intern about that before you come at me. So the first thing during the internship, get 2 because it allows them to work together. A really small thing as well, I did an internship recently, and at the end of it, I said, hey, what was the most valuable thing for you? And I thought, your leadership, Ben. It was your leadership that I enjoyed the most. They said, no. They said, the most thing I enjoyed was that luncheon with the senior pastor. One of the things that I always do is say, we're going to have a luncheon with a senior pastor, and it's that they need to eat. So it's not much of their time, half an hour, whatever it is. They said the fact that I was able to get FaceTime, it was a bigger church, and not many people had FaceTime with the lead pastor. That small thing at the end of the internship was the biggest value to them. So a couple of small things like that makes the internship very valuable throughout the whole process.
What are some things that they learned from that face-to-face?
Value. So the lead pastor wasn't giving them theology, wasn't, I'm going to tell you about, the fact that I'm spending time with you is valuable. There's that great book, Never Eat Lunch Alone. The fact that you're able to value people with your lunch hour, the only thing they learned was I'm an important member of this organization, even though I'm just an intern. They still believe in me. They still want to pour into me.
Okay, so after my internship is over, walk me through that. What should I do to release them well?
That's great, and this is probably the biggest gap where people miss many opportunities. The first thing is give them an exit interview. Again, same way that you would treat a staff, treat them that way. They're probably not going to give you the same insight that a staff member from 8 to 10 years would give you after an 8 to 10 week internship, but they're going to give you some value. That's the one. The second one is give them a review, give them a write-up, give them a letter of recommendation, post on their LinkedIn page, say, hey, this person did a phenomenal job. Those small things helps them move forward. And then one of the things I always do, sometimes they move on to another organization, they move on. I like to follow up. I put on my calendar the year afterwards, just a reminder, touch base with them. How are you doing? What has God done in your life over the past year? I'd love to have a half an hour conversation with you. And even that follow-up goes beyond the initial couple of weeks, but beyond that, it really pours into them. So thinking through it in that factor, not just during, but the before and after, makes it a very robust experience. Then at the end of the day, it's beneficial for them, but the ROI, what's in it for us, it's beneficial for you. Because when they go and say, hey, I'm going to leave, I'm going to talk up this church. I'm going to talk up this internship. It was a very valuable experience for me. When they're talking to their friends and their peers and their social circles that you don't have access to, they're going to say, hey, I did it last summer. I think you should consider it next summer because it was super helpful.
So you were talking that you have just did one recently. Give me a couple of stories from that was really beneficial that you learned from that experience?
You mean overseeing the interns?
Overseeing that internship program, yeah.
The camaraderie that we had with the internships. The other thing I didn't mention here was they naturally had a cross-pollination. So I was at a large church. There was 2 interns in the creative arts department, 2 in the family, and the 2 in the pastoral. And they, in amongst themselves, they started to have, I think every Tuesday they would do lunch together. And this organically, they had some cross-pollination with themselves. So that's the other thing, to not just get 2 in a department, but if you have other ones in other departments, get them together at times, because that's life-giving for them to say, hey, you're an internship, I'm an intern as well. We're doing this together.
Yeah. What about the staff members? Was it just you that led all of them, or were there different departments that had to put them to work? What was some of the feedback from those other staff members? That's a great question. One of the feedbacks I've received was they didn't realize that it's beyond managing, it's also mentoring. And they realized that there's a high degree of mentorship that the intern was expecting for them, where again, it's not even their first job, right? So you have a first job employee, the amount of mentorship you need to do to get them up to speed is pretty high. It's even higher for interns. So being aware of that, you're managing and mentoring is helpful to go in, that there's a lot of invested time there that you need to be aware of. So it's a beneficial process for them. What about the church? What benefits, and we talked through some, but what benefits are there to have a continual internship program available at my church?
Yeah, so oftentimes most internships will run during the summer, but the nice thing is that doesn't mean you can't recruit throughout the year. I've seen a lot of churches, they'll wait till July to recruit for August, and then at that point everyone's lined up and it's too little too late. So recruit throughout the year, even if you just have it during the summer. And then the other thing too is realize which departments are really beneficial to have that. Students is great. People have the time off during the summer. Students ministry actually ramps up during that time. Again, the artistic fields like we're talking about here, beneficial year-round, so that applies. Now, in terms of finance, I don't know if I put interns there in the finance department overseeing your budget.
Right.
But most departments in churches, again, artistic in particular, can really flourish and thrive from an intern.
All right, so last question for you. I'm going to go back and start the process of creating an internship program at my church. Give me the first steps.
The first step would be to start now. So if you don't have an internship, some people will, we have to develop this whole process. I would start now in terms of even putting the word out, because that, to me, it's the longest thing in terms of getting qualified candidates. And so you'll build the rest of the plane as it flies, but don't wait till you have the great internships to develop the program. Recruit, get those interns, and then figure out the program as you go. I've always found that to be the biggest lag, people waiting to recruit.
Yeah, good. Well, man, thank you so much for your time. I know we've done this a lot at conferences and on Zoom and stuff, and just the leadership that you're pouring into other people, the knowledge that you're giving them, and just the encouragement for other church staff members, volunteers that you do. It's a pleasure seeing you do that, and thank you for the time today.
Thanks for the time, Carl.
Hey friends, if you are a ministry leader that needs high quality graphics and video content at your church and fast, be sure to check out our growing ready-made media library at 1230media.com. We have 9 product lines of fresh content, including mini movies, motion backgrounds, countdowns, full series kits, themed packs, and more. And we are adding to the library every single day, every single week, fresh content dropping inside the library. You can start downloading your church visuals today, either a la carte or through our annual subscription. It's all at 1230media.com/go for Go Unlimited, 1230media.com/go. Hey guys, I'm hanging out with Darren Foreman. Darren, you are on staff at Eagle's Nest Church, right? In Georgia, Roswell, Georgia?
Correct. Roswell,
awesome.
Georgia,
And
yeah.
so tell me about your staff role and what you do there.
Yeah, man. So technically, I'm over all of our environments, all of our ministry environments. So it's a director over Auxiliary Ministries, and that's everything from our kids ministry to our teens ministry to our small group ministry to our women's to our men's.
So your job is to make sure that everything runs.
Yes.
Is that mainly on Sunday or during the week as well?
No, it feels like it's year round, man. But it's there's a Sunday environment with our kids and with our teens.
Yeah.
But then like with our small group ministry, right, that happens outside of Sunday, and then with our other auxiliary ministries, that's outside of Sunday. So it's got my hands full.
A lot on the plate, man.
A lot on the plate.
How long have you been in ministry?
Oh man, I guess now 6 years.
Okay.
I was in corporate for a while. I was in corporate for about 13 years.
Oh wow.
And then transitioned into ministry maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so your content this week here at SALT, you've done a workshop on avoiding burnout, which never, ever happens in church world. Never. I don't know why you're laughing. This just never happens.
I'm laughing at the title. I don't know if I avoided it. But
man, so yes, absolutely. Ministry's hard. There's ups and downs. It's a roller coaster, and the longer that you've been in it, if you haven't experienced some type of burnout or questioning and things, then just wait, because it's coming. For sure. So talk to me. Give me kind of an overview of your workshop and kind of what you talked about on this topic.
Yeah, man. So we approach it, or I approach it, I should say, from the standpoint of like I'm not the subject matter expert on it. Right. So this is not something you're showing up and I'm giving you all the tools to avoid ministry burnout. More so was me sharing what I felt like was burnout.
Okay.
And some things that helped me get out of that spiraling effect. And so we talked about time and how you're being intentional with your time and learning how to do that.
Give me some more on that.
So like, for instance, some takeaways that I gave was it sounds very simple, but being very intentional about how you plan your day. Right. Like understanding that time is finite, that is fleeting. And if you don't make a plan for it, someone or something else will. And so something as simple as planning your day, knowing what you're going into. And the part 2 to that was reviewing your schedule on a regular basis, right? Like understanding what your week looks like, what your day looks like, adjusting accordingly. And then the third part to that was just being clear and setting expectations and boundaries in terms of what's eating away at your time.
So as far as time goes, do you use a project management software? Do you use a calendar tool? What do you use to do that?
Good. So it's a calendar tool, but my wife would say it was project management in terms of how I treat it with her. But yeah, it's a calendar, man. We schedule everything, man. We have a work calendar, we have a family calendar.
What tool is it? What
Apple,
app?
just Apple Maps.
Okay, just Apple Calendar. I just iCal from. Okay, awesome. So what else did you talk about in your?
Yeah, we talked about energy. And we talked about it from the perspective, and I was kind of going back and forth on this. So there's a lot of information out there about being aware of like your energy cycle, right? Like, like your ebbs and your flows, and with your high peak energy and your low peak energy. I didn't want to geek out too much on that, but I did talk about the importance of being aware. Like if it is something, it is real that you are either a night owl or you're early bird.
Yeah, right? where your green zone is.
Where your green zone is, where your red zone, and not doing your most important stuff in your green zone and not doing it in your red zone. So we just touched on that a little bit. And it was more so just encouragement to go and figure that out.
Good.
And then the very last thing we talked about was priorities. And we just, man, we leaned on Stephen Covey's, those 4 quadrants to talk about what's important versus urgent. And we dove into that a little bit. And so really holistically, it was like, hey, just being aware of your time, your energy, and your priorities, and having some type of plan in place will help.
Good. So what's some of your story? And have you fried out, or are you just making sure that you don't? What's some of your story in that?
It feels like at one point I did. If I did not burn out, I was dangerously close to it.
Good. Okay.
I was close enough to it to be aware that I needed to do something. And so I know we all have our pandemic story, but my pandemic story is I stepped down from ministry for a minute. Like I stepped down. I was a part of a big ministry back at home. Stepped down, took a year off to be at home with our 2 boys. At the time, kindergartner and then a 2-year-old. And just took a year off, man. And then I ended up a year after that taking on a role at Eagles Nest Church where I'm at now. And just taking on that big role. And my nature wanting to get in there and get at it, I had no checks and balances, man. So my time was...
so when you came on staff at church, it was just kind of everywhere?
Everywhere, man. Like my calendar booked up from morning to evening. My off days booked up. And it was all me. It was me not having boundaries with my time and my energy and my...
so when did it click for you? When you're like, oh, I got to do something here?
Man, let's say maybe 6 months ago.
Oh, okay. So very fresh.
Yeah, very fresh. Like I would say, like even in preparation for this workshop, I realized some more stuff. I realized more and more that I wasn't where I wanted to be, and I had a lot more to learn. So again, like I said earlier, man, it's a journey for me, and I just wanted to share where I'm at so far in the journey.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think there's a struggle to be intentional. There's a struggle to, I think, sometimes I'm doing good for a while. I think that it's, and then it kind of falls apart and then back. And then, so it's definitely a roller coaster ride of how can I plan my day? How can I be intentional so I don't fry out? A lot of ministry people have experienced this lately. I've seen the last few years, a lot of people either frying out in ministry and some of that comes from pandemic. They went from one staff role to now, 3. They're now responsible for this plus the stream plus plus that, and so speak to the staff member. What are some ways that you can encourage them if they're experiencing burnout right now?
Man, I would say, that's a good question. I would say boundaries. Like we had that was one of the questions that came up in the Q&A, was just talking about like, hey, how do you, one, recognize that you may be on the path or maybe burning out? So I think that's one thing, right? There are some different things you can pay attention to. It's like, one, your depletion of energy, but also like your attitude, like your posture towards things. But then 2, I think it's having those conversations, man, setting boundaries and being able to clearly say, hey, when are you working, when you're not working? Something as simple as that. Hey, I'm off on this day. I'm not working past this hour. And it sounds simple, but having those boundaries, communicating those boundaries is key.
Do you run into staff members, your boss, that says, no, I expect you to work? Like, you're not going to tell me that you're off it.
Yeah. So I have not, fortunately I have not, but unfortunately I know people do run into that. And one of the questions came up was like, what if you're in a situation where you're doing what you're supposed to do, but your work environment, is not going to allow you to find that balance? And the reality there is you may be put in a tough position where you have to make a decision. Right. If you're having the conversations,
I need to be working at a place that respects those boundaries, but also communicate to them. Look, when I'm on, I'm going to give 100%. But like, come 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever it is, like my family time is so valuable to me that I'm out.
And you think, one thing we talked about, what's my man, Greg Geiger, I think is his name. He's a pastor out in Southern Cal. He did a podcast years ago, but he was talking about why ministry leaders are so susceptible to burnout. And he was talking about a couple of different things. And one of the things he talked about was unhealthy expectations, The reality of it is that you're, the people that you're leading, the people that you're working with, oftentimes, they have a full-time job. So their off hours, your off hours is the only time that they're available. Because they're having to work and how to balance that, how to respect their time, but also have your own boundaries. And then also the tendency to think just because we're in ministry, that means it's a 24/7 gig.
I agree with you. I mean, especially like a senior pastor or high level when you're doing hospital visits and things like that. You can't, you can't schedule when somebody passes away that you need to go be with the family or something like that. And so to do things like, I'm going to go this one night to be with this family, but tomorrow I'm going to go in late and spend that morning with my family or whatever to make up that. So, So what's something that I could take away right now when it comes to burnout? How do I prevent it?
I would say awareness. That's the first thing I would say. I would say awareness. I think, again, whether you're ready to put these different tools in place in terms of managing your time and managing your energy and priorities, I think the first the first point that you want to do is actually start paying attention to, like, where is my time going? Like, how is my energy? And how am I being intentional about my priorities? And I think as you start to look at that, at least how I did, I started to look at that. I started to realize things were out of whack. And then last thing I would say on that is pay attention to people who care for you. Like my wife, she was someone who was speaking into my blind spots. She was letting me know, hey, I know you think you got it, but I'm telling you, you're going at an unsustainable pace.
She's standing right over there, right?
She is.
You're earning points right now.
I am. That was why I said it. I looked over and I was like, let me go ahead and make this plug real quick. Her birthday's tomorrow, by the way. So all those good things.
Darren, man, pleasure meeting you. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
Well, hey, friends, thanks so much for joining us this week. Be sure to subscribe to our show, leave a review. Feel free to email me directly if you'd like, carl@1230.media. I'd love to hear from you directly. We've heard a lot of mail from podcast listeners and clients and and folks who use us for ready-made media as well. So thank you so much for sending those in. It's great to know that you're out there. We try to reach out to as many people as we possibly can. I've been traveling some to meet with churches and meet with pastors to just encourage you guys and talk with you more about what you're struggling with and all that. So feel free to shoot me an email, carl@1230.media. If you're struggling if you have a need, if you're trying to solve something, or just need somebody to listen, I'm here, carl@1230.media. All right, next week I welcome my friends Caleb Weidman and Zach Snyder from Black Bar. We'll be talking to these guys about animation and motion graphics 101 and the best ways that you can break into YouTube as a ministry. That'll be next week. We'll go out there and create some incredible worship experiences at your church this weekend. I'll catch you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit MakingSundayHappen.com.